From soldier to fugitive. Travis Caleb Decker once wore the uniform of the United States Army. Friends and neighbors in Wenatchee, Washington, described him as quiet, athletic, and fiercely protective of his 3 young daughters. But in the years after his service, something shifted. Court filings later revealed a tangled history of mental health struggles, custody disputes, and increasing paranoia. By the spring of 2025, Decker was living apart from the girl's mother. Custody exchanges were routine until May 30th. That Friday, he was due to return the children after a scheduled visit. He never showed. When calls and messages went unanswered, their mother reported the children missing. Deputies with the Chelan County Sheriff's Office traced Decker's phone to the Leavenworth area, a rugged swath of Washington's Alpine Lakes wilderness. The location data abruptly went dark. For 2 days, there was no sign of him until a hiker spotted a dark pickup truck parked off a gravel road near Rock Island Campground. The plates matched Decker's. Deputies approached cautiously. Inside the truck, camping gear, personal items, and evidence later described in court documents as concerning. Behind the vehicle, the forest opened into a clearing, and there, scattered through the underbrush, search teams made a devastating discovery. According to the probable cause affidavit, the girls' bodies were found zip-tied, with plastic bags over their heads. They lay 75 to 100 yards from the truck, hidden in shallow brush. A bloody handprint on the tailgate matched Decker's DNA. The county coroner's ruling was grim: death by suffocation. With a triple murder warrant in hand, the sheriff's office called in reinforcements: the FBI, U.S. Marshals Service, Homeland Security Investigations, and Border Patrol. Within hours, the marshals put up a $20,000 reward. For weeks, the Alpine Lakes area became a search grid. Teams in tactical gear combed ridgelines, river crossings, and caves. Helicopters scanned tree canopies. K-9 units picked up faint trails, only to lose them on rocky slopes. Tips poured in: a man with a pack moving along the Wenatchee River, a shadow near a Forest Service road, campfire smoke in the Sawtooth backcountry. Each lead ended in dead ends or dead silence. By late July, 8 weeks into the manhunt, the sheriff's office made a rare public admission: the search was scaling back. There were fewer tips now, fewer sightings. No proof of life and no proof of death. The forest had reclaimed its quiet, but the bloody handprint lingered in the minds of those hunting him. Somewhere beyond the last ridge, Travis Decker was either running or watching. 8 weeks later. By the end of July 2025, the official manhunt had lost its roar. Helicopters no longer thundered over Blewett Pass each morning. Tactical teams no longer fanned out daily into the Alpine Lakes wilderness. Instead, the Chelan County Sheriff's Office quietly admitted what locals feared: the trail had gone cold. Sheriff Mike Morrison told reporters that his deputies were still out there, but the operation was now strategic rather than constant. There were simply too few credible tips to justify the same level of force. And yet, the questions kept multiplying. Had Decker escaped the search perimeter in those chaotic first hours? Could he have used his military survival training to vanish in the Washington backcountry? Or, an unspoken theory among some, was his body lying undiscovered in some hidden canyon? August was closing in, and with it came bear hunting season, a time when more armed people would trek deep into the wilderness. Authorities hoped that hunters, stumbling across places even search teams hadn't reached, might find clues: a discarded pack, a makeshift shelter, or something worse. In mid-August, one hunter swore he saw a figure dart between tree trunks at dawn, tall, wiry, carrying a bough. The man vanished before the hunter could raise his binoculars. Deputies combed the area and found only an extinguished campfire and fresh boot prints. The tread pattern? Close enough to Decker's last known footwear to make the hairs on a detective's neck stand up. A few weeks later, a fisherman claimed he saw movement on the opposite bank of Icicle Creek. "Just a glimpse," he told reporters, "but I know when I'm being watched." The man on the far shore didn't move toward the road. He slipped into the trees without a sound. By now, even the search crews were starting to talk about the manhunt in the present tense, as though Decker were not just a suspect, but a presence. On the 73rd day, a game camera in the Blewett Pass backcountry captured a single, grainy frame: a man's silhouette, head turned toward the lens. The next frame was empty. Into myth and memory. By early September 2025, the manhunt had crossed a strange threshold. Travis Decker was no longer just a fugitive, he was a shadow stitched into the fabric of Chelan County's wilderness lore. People began to speak of him the way mountain towns speak of cougars and black bears, not if you'll see one, but when. The investigative team, now working more from offices than ridgelines, divided into camps. The survivalists, those convinced Decker's military training and knowledge of the terrain gave him the edge to survive indefinitely, fishing creeks, snaring small game, moving only at night. The opportunists, those who believed he'd slipped out of Washington entirely in the confusion of the early days, maybe into Canada, maybe into another life. The fatalists, the ones who quietly suspected the wilderness had already claimed him, his remains waiting in some hidden canyon, the mystery solved only by chance. An FBI behavioral analyst joined the task force, building a profile that mixed hard data with the unsettling unknown. Decker was resourceful, disciplined, and physically conditioned. He had strong emotional triggers tied to his children, suggesting he might avoid populated areas where reminders of family life could destabilize him. His risk tolerance was high, meaning he might test law enforcement's perimeter just to prove he could. One line in the analyst's report stood out: Decker's motivation may now be as much about control over the narrative as survival. The U.S. Marshals shifted from saturation searching to a long-game hunt, quiet monitoring of supply stores, gas stations, pawn shops, and rural mail drops. Wildlife cameras were networked into a shared database, hoping to cross-reference sightings with movement patterns. Locals were encouraged to report not just strangers, but odd absences, like the neighbor who'd stopped coming to town altogether. Meanwhile, in coffee shops and online forums, Decker's name began to mutate into something less human and more folkloric. Some painted him as a cold-blooded murderer. Others whispered of conspiracy's wrong man, planted evidence, a government cover-up. In Leavenworth's tourist gift shops, more than one novelty t-shirt appeared bearing the slogan, "Still out there." Then came the trail cam footage from a ridge above Icicle Gorge, clearer this time. A man with a beard, a weathered rucksack, and eyes locked straight into the lens. He was smiling. The smile in the trees. The trail cam photo from Icicle Gorge rattled the task force more than they cared to admit. It wasn't just proof of life, it was proof of awareness. Decker wasn't avoiding detection, he was posing for it. For the first time in months, law enforcement had a timestamp and a location they could trust. The ridge where the photo was taken was 3 miles from the nearest Forest Service road and overlooked a narrow section of the creek where crossing on foot was possible. By dawn the next day, tactical teams moved in quietly, leapfrogging positions to seal off escape routes. They found a still warm fire ring, trout bones scattered beside it, and a crude lean-to made from pine boughs. On a flat rock near the camp sat a single, unnerving object, a girl's hair tie, pink with a tiny plastic butterfly. The FBI's evidence team couldn't immediately determine if it belonged to one of Decker's daughters or if it was meant as bait or a message. Late that afternoon, a drone operator spotted movement along a game trail just below the ridge. The figure was wearing a hooded jacket, moving at a steady but unhurried pace. Teams scrambled to intercept, but by the time they reached the spot, the trail ended in a steep drop into a gulch. No footprints on the other side. No sound of movement. It was as if the forest had swallowed him whole. The task force began to operate under a new, chilling assumption: Decker wasn't just surviving, he was actively monitoring their movements. The placement of the trail cam smile, the timing of his camp abandonment, the absence of panic, it all suggested control. One deputy put it bluntly in a radio check. "Feels like we're not hunting him. Feels like we're in his backyard and he's letting us stay, for now." On September 18th, a package arrived at the Chelan County Sheriff's Office. No return address. Inside, a single Polaroid of the search team taken from a distance. And in the bottom corner, scrawled in black marker, "Still out there. When the hunter speaks." The Polaroid was more than a taunt, it was a declaration. In the span of 75 days, Travis Decker had transformed from a fugitive on the run into an active participant in the game. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was engaging. The envelope was fingerprinted, nothing. Swabbed for DNA, partial profiles, likely environmental contamination. The handwriting analysis came back inconclusive, though the slant in pressure suggested a confident hand. The paper of the Polaroid's backing was traced to a discontinued batch manufactured in the late 2000s. Someone had kept it for years. One question kept the task force awake: how close had Decker been to take that picture without detection? The U.S. Marshals shifted strategy again, this time focusing on bait. They staged false search zones in hopes of luring Decker to watch, positioning hidden surveillance to catch him in the act. For 2 weeks, nothing. Then, on a foggy morning, a camera captured a hooded figure crouched behind a fallen log, less than 30 yards from a bait perimeter. He stayed there for nearly an hour, unmoving, before slipping away. The unnerving part? His head never turned toward the hidden camera. Either he didn't see it or he knew it was there and wanted them to think he didn't. Veteran deputies, men and women with decades in the field, began requesting rotation out of the core search zones. The idea of an armed fugitive observing them in silence, close enough to smell the campfire on their gear, was too much for some. One FBI agent, speaking off record, said, "We're not chasing him through the wilderness anymore. We're moving inside his story, and he's the narrator." Then came the second package. This one was heavier, wrapped in brown butcher paper. Inside, a laminated map of Chelan County. A red X marked a point deep in the wilderness, and a handwritten note beneath it read, "Meet me. Come alone." The sheriff made the call to send a small, armed reconnaissance team to the coordinates at dawn. As the sun broke over the ridge, their radios crackled, not with their own voices, but with a man's low laugh echoing across the channel. The laugh on the radio. The sound froze the team in place. It was low, deliberate, and unmistakably human, a chuckle that rolled over the open frequency like a predator clearing its throat. Someone was broadcasting directly into their encrypted channel. The red X on Decker's map was a narrow saddle between two ridges, choked with alder and hemlock. Visibility was less than 20 feet in places. The team split into pairs, leapfrogging forward, scanning for tripwires or ground disturbances. Every so often, the radio popped with static, then another faint sound. A breath. A whistle. It felt less like they were closing in and more like they were being drawn in. At the coordinates, they found a small clearing barely big enough for a tent. In the center sat a battered green ammo can. On top, taped down with electrical tape, was a GoPro camera still recording. Inside the can, a half-empty bottle of water. A weathered hunting knife. And a note, printed in block letters. Too slow. When the GoPro footage was reviewed, it showed a man bearded, hooded, back to the camera, setting the box in place just 2 hours before the team arrived. He never looked at the lens, but halfway through, he stopped moving, as if listening. In the background of the video, faint but clear, came the sound of voices, the team's voices. He'd been close enough to hear their approach in real time. That night, at the remote command post, a motion alarm tripped on one of the perimeter cameras. Deputies rushed to review it and found a single frame. Decker, standing just beyond the tree-line, holding up a laminated card that read, "Check your 6." The power cut out at the command post. Backup generators kicked in. When the lights returned, the laminated card was taped to the inside of the operations tent. Inside the wire. The laminated card on the operations tent wall was still wet from rain. That meant one thing: Travis Decker had been inside the command post perimeter less than an hour ago. Every tent, every vehicle, every crate was checked. No footprints were found in the muddy gravel where there should have been dozens. It was as if he had materialized in the middle of the camp and vanished again without leaving a trace. The FBI tech team swept for trackers, bugs, and hidden cameras. In one corner of the communications tent, wedged between a radio rack and the wall panel, they found a small black device no bigger than a lighter. A transmitter. Battery fresh. The sheriff convened a midnight meeting with the task force. It was decided that the search operation could no longer be a purely defensive hunt. Decker had shifted the battlefield. They needed to shift it back. 3 operatives, 2 U.S. Marshals and 1 FBI HRT specialist, were selected for a silent sweep of the perimeter. The mission, not to track Decker, but to draw him out. Hours into the sweep, One of the marshals found a small object on the forest floor, a child's plastic walkie-talkie. Its antenna snapped. When he picked it up, the speaker crackled. "You're getting warmer." The voice was calm, almost amused. Movement sensors lit up sporadically through the night, pings on opposite sides of the perimeter, impossible for one man to cover so quickly. Either Decker had help, or he had mastered the terrain to a degree no one could match. Every few hours, another small item appeared in the camp. A length of paracord. A matchbox. A Polaroid of one of the deputies asleep in their tent. At 3:47 a.m., a call came over the encrypted channel, one the team knew for certain Decker should not have access to. It was his voice. Slow. Even. Unshaken. Sunrise. The old fire tower. Bring only one. And then, silence. The tower at dawn. The old fire tower stood like a skeleton against the pre-dawn sky, its rusted frame swaying faintly in the wind. Built in the 1940s, it had long since been decommissioned. The top platform, 30 feet above the forest floor, was accessible only by a narrow, rotting staircase. It was a place where visibility worked both ways. The sheriff, against the advice of nearly everyone in the room, insisted on going alone. Wearing a body cam and carrying only a sidearm, he moved quietly along the frost-crusted trail, each footstep crunching like a signal flare in the stillness. Halfway there, the radio clicked alive. Decker's voice, low and steady. "Don't rush. I want to see you coming." The forest seemed to breathe differently the closer he got. Fresh boot prints marked the frost near the base of the tower, one set going up, none coming down. A rope dangled from the lowest landing, swaying slightly as if it had just been used. At the second landing, the sheriff froze. Above him, silhouetted in the pale orange light, stood a figure, tall, broad-shouldered, motionless. The hood concealed the face, but the posture was unmistakable. "Decker." The sheriff raised his hands, speaking slowly, deliberately. "I'm here. Just me. Let's talk." For several seconds, there was nothing. Then Decker spoke, not with anger, but with an unsettling calm. "You're late. And now they're coming." Before the sheriff could ask, a distant sound echoed through the forest, boots on frozen ground. More than one set. Too far to be backup. Decker stepped backward into the shadows of the tower's platform and vanished from sight. A heartbeat later, the sheriff's radio crackled with a voice that wasn't Decker's. "Drop your weapon. Hands where we can see them." The shadow in the woods. The sheriff froze, his breath misting in the cold air. The voice over the radio was male, firm, and controlled, but it wasn't from his task force. From the tree-line, 4 men emerged, their faces obscured by balaclavas. They carried rifles, their movements disciplined but not quite military. Private militia. The sheriff slowly lowered his sidearm and stepped away from it. One of the masked men circled behind him, checking for other weapons. Another kept his rifle trained squarely on the sheriff's chest. "Where is he?" the leader asked. The sheriff didn't answer. Up above, on the fire tower platform, there was movement, a shadow gliding between beams. When the sheriff glanced up, the platform was empty. Decker was gone. The militia leader muttered a curse under his breath and signaled his men. They fanned out toward the north ridge, moving quickly, clearly knowing where they wanted to go. When the sheriff's backup finally arrived minutes later, the militia was gone. No footprints were found beyond the clearing. No tire tracks on the old forest road. It was as though they had evaporated into the trees. Inside the fire tower's top cabin, investigators found only one item, a battered topographic map of Chelan County with 3XS marked in red ink. 2 were already known Decker sightings. The third was in a location far outside the search grid. In the days that followed, the task force remained tight-lipped. No public mention was made of the militia encounter. The official press release stated only that the search perimeter has been expanded due to new intelligence. Behind closed doors, agents whispered about the possibility that Decker was no longer alone and that the manhunt had crossed into something more organized, more dangerous. A week later, a sealed envelope arrived at a small post office in central Washington. Inside was a Polaroid showing the old fire tower at sunrise empty, quiet, abandoned. On the back, in the same block letters as before, were 2 words. Next move. To be continued, pending new developments. Please like, comment and subscribe.